Hi everyone and welcome to Newegg TV. My name is Paul and today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this motherboard from ASUS. This is the ASUS SABERTOOTH 990FX 2.0. Now the SABERTOOTH 990FX motherboard has been out for a while. There's a very good reason why you might want to get revision 2.0. There's some hardware as well as some very important Uefi updates that ASUS has made, and specifically if you're going to be purchasing one of the newer FX processors, or second-gen FX processors. They use pile driver microarchitecture, and you might recognize them based on the little code that's right there. So for instance, the first-gen FX processors, the first-gen version of this would be the 8150. This one is the 8350, as you can probably see right there. And in order to be compatible, well, there's a lot of 990FX motherboards that are, of course, compatible with the newer processors, but you will at the very least need to update your Uefi. It used to be called BIOS, now it's called Uefi. And this particular motherboard, revision 2.0, is going to ship with an installed Uefi that's not only set up for the second-gen FX processors, but ASUS has also been doing a lot of work with the microcode and the Uefi and making sure that they're Windows 8 compatible, Windows 8 ready, and they've been switching all of their boards, or at least their newest boards, over from the ROM format to the cap format. And when you switch from the ROM to cap, well, you get Windows 8 compatibility, you get some other security features of Windows 8 that it's able to take advantage of, and from a direct end user perspective, you're going to get much faster boot times. It's noticeably faster, so I can verify that. But you're going to want to pair this board probably with an FX processor, either first or second gen. This is a 9 series chipset, 990FX specifically. It also features the 950SB Sli Bridge. You also get support for NVIDIA SLI and AMD Crossfire X. I believe 3-way for both of those, but I'll confirm later in the video. And then another really cool feature of the TUF series of motherboards that SABERTOOTH is part of, the Ultimate Force, as indicated by ASUS, is they've really designed these boards to perform, but also to have a very long lifespan. They're using military-rated components, and they back that up with a 5-year manufacturer's warranty. Let's take a look inside the flap here, because we have a flap. So some of the features of this particular motherboard is on the heatsinks. You have the ceramics heatsink coating technology. Basically that provides greater surface area and conducts heat away more effectively due to that. You also have thermal radar. There's just a ton of actual thermal read points that are integrated onto the motherboard. And you can use the thermal radar software to monitor that, as well as to control your fan speeds to make sure that your components are staying within a reasonable temperature. You also have digital power delivery for both the CPU as well as the memory. And that's really been a big step that ASUS has taken over the past few years, is to introduce digital power delivery via the voltage and power regulation modules on the motherboard, and it just provides more stability, greater lifespan again, and especially if you're going to be doing overclocking, which this board is very suited for, then that's great to have, digital power delivery. You also have TUF components, as previously mentioned, certified for tough duty, military spec rated. You have a remote go function, which I have not used personally, but Remote Go links PCs, tablets, smartphones, and TVs wirelessly together through an existing LAN cable and root setup. Provides a seamless environment for a futuristic connected lifestyle with 3 useful functions: DLNA Media Hub, remote desktop, and file transfer. So you have that functionality. You have a Uefi Bios. Let's just stop saying BIOS. It's a Uefi, but you can call it a Uefi Bios because people are really used to saying BIOS. But that will allow you to access easy mode, which is a more graphical layout for the Uefi, which a lot of folks find much more easy to understand. Of course, you can switch to advanced mode if you're an advanced user and you want to do overclocking. It does still have that. You can switch back and forth between the two. USB BIOS flashback is something that's been introduced with revision 2.0 of this board, and this is one of my favorite features that's come out in the recent years, I must say, because if you've ever updated your BIOS, you can understand it's a nail-biting experience, especially if you don't have a power supply to back up your system. Because in certain situations, if you have a single BIOS chip and your power goes out, you can actually kill your motherboard. But USB BIOS flashback allows you to refresh your BIOS from a USB stick. You don't need a CPU or a memory installed even, you just need your power connected, and it's really easy to do. It gives you more peace of mind when you're updating your BIOS, and it gives you a much easier way to do it. Finally, some more logos down here at the bottom: ESP, electrostatic protection, electrostatic guards, front panel USB 3.0, direct key functionality, which I'll show you on the board, Memo K switch, 8-channel audio. I'm going to flip around to the back here really quick. This are some more specs that I've probably already talked about, but you guys can pause and take a closer look if you want. I am going to next move on to accessories. Taking a look inside, we have the motherboard itself, which is heavy because it's a tough motherboard, and tough motherboards are heavy. We also have an assortment of accessories and documentation. Oh, that's a little supplemental SATA notice. Okay, here's a sticker, ASUS Tough Inside. So you can put that on your case if you like case stickers. Here is an input-output shield for the back of your case. This is all black, so it looks nice and clean. All the inputs and outputs are clearly labeled there, so you can tell what's what. And you have this squishy foam right here in the back, which helps prevent cuts and also does a very good job at doing some electromagnetic shielding, which is a more practical use than it just being squishy. Here's your certificate of reliability. So for the capacitors, the chokes, and the MOSFETs. So these are individually tested, all the components, to military standards prior to being installed on the motherboard when it's assembled, and then ASUS does server-grade testing on this motherboard as well after the motherboard is assembled, so you can make sure that well, it's going to work out of the box, and also that you're going to have long lifespan on all of these, because they test them at really hot, I believe it's 60 degrees Celsius, 90% humidity is the server-grade test that they do on this board to ensure the lifespan, ensure everything's working right. Here is your 5-year warranty notice. With an extra page in here. What's that? Oh, that wasn't supposed to go in there. This is some information about serial ATA. ASUS actually sets up AHCI immediately on their motherboards, which I really like because sometimes you forget to go and change that from IDE to AHCI, and if you're installing onto an SSD, you don't want to use IDE mode. So I like that ASUS has done that, but it can conflict with compatibility with older drives, so they put that notice in there to let you know that they did that. Here's your main motherboard user's guide. Here is your SABERTOOTH 990FX driver disk as well as software. There's going to be updated versions of these drivers on the ASUS website, so I recommend going there to download them, the newer versions, rather than using the ones on this disk. But the disk can still be very handy, particularly the LAN driver on this disk, because if whatever OS you install doesn't recognize your NIC right after installation, you will need to load the LAN driver off of that. And here's your Powered by ASUS case badge. Your user guide is very important. Keep this around while you're doing your build. It has cool stuff like a table of all of the hardware components that are installed on there, as well as the additional software. And then important stuff in here like where to install. Here's your memory compatibility chart, where to install your DIMMs in the right slots, and so on and so forth. All right, some more accessories down here. The really fun ASUS Q connector, that white block right there for front panel connections. Plug your little strings of front panel headers into that block, plug the block into the motherboard. Much easier. Also, you have a little USB 2.0 version of that, although I find that I've never actually used one of those. Here's a Sli bridge, so two-way Sli bridge, one of the flexible non-PCB ones. So if you are going to do SLI, you can use that bridge. If you're going to do Crossfire X, those Crossfire X bridges usually come with the video cards. Here are your serial ATA cables. They give you a total of 4. They're all SATA Revision 3 compatible. They have the little clasps, and they all have straight plugs on one end and L-shaped plugs on the other. Here's a look at the SABERTOOTH 990FX Revision 2.0, and as you can see, sticking with the tough theme, we have a color scheme of black with some military colors, earth tones if you will, tan, brown, even a little bit of green right in there as well. The PCB itself is a sort of semi-gloss black color. There's a look at the back so you can see the color of the PCB. Heat sinks are mounted with Phillips head spring-loaded screws. This one's also screwed in from the opposite side, so you can remove all of the heat sinks on the board if necessary in the future, if you want to clean them or that sort of thing. And then taking a look here at the front, I did want to point out the fan headers to start off with. You have 6 total. They're all 4-pin PWM fan headers. So CPU fan 1 and CPU fan 2 right up there at the top. Another chassis fan header right there on the right side. Oh, I almost missed another chassis fan header up here in the top right. And then 2 more chassis fan headers tucked right in here. The white one here, chassis fan 4, is recommended to plug in your side case fan if you have a case fan out here that's blowing, for instance, directly onto your GPUs. That's where you want to plug that in. Next up, let's take a look at the board in detail. We're going to start off in the lower right-hand corner. with front panel connectors. So there you can see the white block. They have a little code there indicating which is the speaker, power switch, reset, and whatnot. That is where you can plug in your Q connector if you're going to use that. Next to that, you have the little direct key button. This is a new button, and this has been introduced because computers are starting to boot up very, very quickly. And if you are a system builder, if you like to go into your Uefi and actually change some things, sometimes it can happen so quickly that you miss it, and you just boot into your operating system. Direct key, by pressing that little button, will tell the system, I want to go into the Uefi. So you push that, then you boot, and then it goes into Uefi, and you don't have to spam delete or anything like that. So a pretty handy button to have on the board there, especially if you're going to be running Windows 8 and an SSD, for example. And then right above it, you notice a little 2-pin header with the DRCT. So that's a direct key header, and actually future cases, I don't know of any cases that have this right now, but they'll actually have another front panel connector that you can attach to those 2 pinouts, and that will give you an actual external button that you can push on your case that essentially performs the same function as that direct key button. So very handy, especially if you like to go into your Uefi to change things around or load multiple profiles or that sort of thing. Next up, you have a COM header. And next to that, you have a clear RTC button right there, so that's to clear your CMOS information if you need to reset to factory defaults. You have a couple USB 2.0 headers right next to that, and those actually come with these little plastic nubs covering them for a bit of added protection or to keep dust from getting in there if you're not using those ports. This little LED light right there is just your standby power, so once you have the power routed up and connected, that light will just turn on, and I find it's very handy to have to make sure that you're getting juice connected to the board, or if you just don't want to double check and see if your power supply switch is on or off. Next to that, you have a trusted platform module header if you have that. Next to that, you have a Thunderbolt header. This board doesn't have Thunderbolt out of the box, but if you purchase the Thunderbolt add-on card from ASUS, you can route the little cable over to that and add on some Thunderbolt functionality. Next to that, you have your front panel connectors. So there's your front panel connector for mic and headphone, also an SPDIF out. And then next to that, on the left side, you have all of your componentry for your audio. Audio on this board, just to mention that, is a Realtek ALC 892 8-channel audio solution. And there's the componentry for that. So next up, let's look at the Pci Express slots that we have right here. So we have some Pci Express. We also have a PCI slot right here. So if you have a legacy device, you can plug it in right there. Your graphics card is going to be installed in this top Pci Express slot right there. That's an X16 slot. You'll notice physically we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 X16 slots. They're actually wired up differently. So you have X16 on the first slot. You also have X16 available on the fourth slot right here, and then down on the 6th slot you have capability for up to X8. The black slot here is going to run at X4 in most configurations, so it's not recommended to plug in your video card right there. What this means is you're going to have triple slot spacing if you're going to go with a 2-card solution, and this does support, as mentioned, Crossfire X as well as SLI configurations. You can do 3-way by using the top slot here, the 4th slot here, as well as the 6th slot down here at the bottom. You can do that for 3-way Crossfire X or SLI. You can also do a quad GPU solution if you have a dual GPU video card such as the GTX 690, and for that it would be recommended to use the 1st and the 4th slot right there. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of how to configure your video cards and add-on cards when you're installing them. And then bear in mind with the maximum configuration, if you're going to be going with 3-way, it's going to be X16, X4, X8, and X8. Also, we have a X1 PCI Express slot right there for an add-on card, if that card is not blocked by a video card, of course. Moving on over to the right side, we actually have a heatsink right there with the ASUS logo on it, and that is on top of our SB950 South Bridge. And South Bridge is controlling a lot of the I/O and connectivity down here, but the thing that we probably care the most about is going to be our serial ATA. So you have 6 serial ATA ports right here. They're all SATA Revision 3, and those are all being controlled by the SB950 South Bridge. And incidentally, those also will support RAID configurations, RAID 0, 1, 5, and 10. You also have a couple ASMedia add-on ports right here for a couple more for a couple more SATA Revision 3 connectors. So all these will do SATA 6 gigabits per second. If you want the faster ones, that's going to be these. The ASMedia will be just a hair or two behind that, but you also get the RAID functionality out of the brown ones, but plenty of serial ATA connectivity for folks who like to have lots of storage and lots of drives connected. Moving up the side of the board, there's one of the fan headers that I mentioned at the beginning. Here's another plastic cover, and that is covering our USB 3.0 20-pin connector. So for front or rear panel, add-on USB 3.0, that'll support a couple more USB 3.0 plugs. Moving up from there, we have our main power connector, 24-pin power connector right there. And then I wanted to point out, if I can find them, actually there's one a little bit further up here. So up here you have a Memo K button, and the Memo K button is very handy. You can push that if you're having any issues getting your memory set up correctly, and that will cycle through some sort of preset, easily configurable options, and basically help you get your board up and running if you're having any issues, especially when it comes to memory compatibility. And then you'll notice right below that you have a DRAM LED. You actually have 4 LEDs on the board. So rather than relying on post beeps, where the computer makes little beep sounds if it's angry and you have to decipher them, you actually have LEDs scattered around. So there's a DRAM LED right here, there's a CPU LED right here, there's a couple more, if I can find them. There's a boot device LED, it's actually all the way down here, I kind of missed that. Boot device LED right there, and then I believe there's also a video card LED, which is somewhere in this area over here. Oh, there it is, VGA LED. So these will light up red, and actually when you first boot your system, it's going to cycle through all 4 of those. But if any of the devices, for example, let's say your boot device doesn't have an operating system, that will hang on that and it will stay red, and then you'll be able to say, okay, well that's a VGA, but you'll be able to say, okay, I'm having video card problems, or okay, I'm having boot device problems, and really helps you get your system up and running and do troubleshooting. Next up, let's talk about the DDR3 DIMM slots that we have right here. This is dual channel DDR3, so you'll notice the brown slots and the tan slots. You will want to install your memory in sets of 2 identical sticks in order to take advantage of that dual channel capability. It supports overclock speeds of up to and beyond 1866. You can go even higher than that if you use higher rated speed memory, and also that's going to depend on the memory controller in the CPU that you choose. Just bear in mind, official support only goes up to 1866. You can get overclock speeds beyond that. And then as far as DIMM capacity, there are officially vetted DIMMs by ASUS of up to 8 gigs per slot. This actually can handle up to 16 gigs per slot, so that gives you a total available capacity of up to 64 gigabytes of memory. However, 16 gig DIMMs are harder to come by these days, so ASUS on their qualified vendors list has 8 gig DIMMs listed, so you can do up to 32 gigs that way. But in the future, you will probably have more access to 16 gig DIMMs, so you can really max out this board's memory capability. Next up, we have the AM3 socket right there, also known as socket 942, and that's going to be compatible with FX series, first and second gen FX series processors. It's also backwards compatible with Phenom 2 processors, but this board's going to be better suited for an FX series processor. You have this mounting solution that's been in use by AMD for quite some time, so there's a really wide variety of aftermarket CPU heatsink fans that are available that can make use of that socket configuration for your cooling needs. Next to that, you have an 8-pin supplemental CPU power connector right up there at the top. And then below that, of course, you have the power delivery area, your VRM. So this is where the ASUS tough components really come into play. Of course, they're scattered throughout the board, but this is where most of them are located. You have capacitors you can see right there. The square bits you can see behind them are your chokes, and then MOSFETs are generally located right beneath this heatsink because those are generally the components that get hottest. The heatsinks, as mentioned at the beginning, are coated with that ceramics coating. Also the SB950 chipset heatsink down there as well, coated with that coating to provide excellent heat dissipation. And then you have a heat pipe that's actually, you can sort of barely see it right in there. That's a heat pipe that's connecting those two blocks, so the heat can basically be transferred back and forth between them, whichever is hotter, and help provide excellent heat dissipation. Now this also has your Digi+ power control, digital power delivery for the CPU as well as for the DRAM. There's actually a chip that you can see right there, and that's handling those power delivery needs. There's another chip that's over just to the right of the memory slots, right over there, Digi+, as you can see. And that's just ensuring that you can get precise control over the DRAM speeds, precise control over your overclock settings on your CPU as well, just so you can have intelligent adjustments on demand for more power to your CPU. And then also, since these are all military-rated components, you also can have the assurance that they're going to last a really long time. For instance, even the capacitors scattered throughout the board are labeled with FP5K. And if you look at a lot of capacitors that are out there, you'll notice they're rated at 2K. That's the hours of lifespan. At 105 degrees Celsius is typically the rating, and ASUS is using components here that go above and beyond that to make sure that your board is going to have a nice long lifespan. Let's finish off here with the inputs and outputs right on the side of the board. So first off, on this side you have a combo PS2 port for a mouse or a keyboard, which is nice to have there, especially if you have a N-key rollover old mechanical keyboard that you're hanging on to, because if you don't have a PS2 port, you can't use that. You also have some USB 2.0, a couple here, 4 more here, 2 more there, so that gives you a total of 8. You have an optical toslink output there for your audio solution. You also have 4 USB 3.0 ports right there, and those are compatible, of course, with the USB 3.0. They can also be enhanced via the USB boost technology that ASUS has available, which really gives you a pretty big jump via using UASP technology to give you the maximum speed transfer available from USB 3.0. Couple more as media, SATA revision 3 6 gigabit per second eSATA ports right there, so you can plug in some external drives. A BIOS reset button conveniently located on the which would be on the the outside of your case, I should say, so allow you to easily reset your BIOS if that becomes necessary. Next to that, you have an RJ45 port, and that is for a wired Ethernet connection that is controlled by a Realtek 8111F gigabit LAN controller. And then finally, you have the analog audio connectors for your Realtek ALC 892 8-channel audio. And that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, this has been the ASUS SABERTOOTH 990FX revision 2.0, featuring the AM3 Plus socket for AMD FX series processors, the 990FX North Bridge, and the 950SB South Bridge. I'm Paul with Newegg TV, and if you enjoyed today's video, you can find more on our Newegg YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.